When Among the Sleep was released in 2014, it stood out immediately. Instead of putting players in the shoes of a hardened survivor or a helpless victim running from creatures, it asked us to crawl, literally, through the world as a 2-year-old child. The game blending childhood imagination with the reality of domestic trauma.
Hey, sweetie. Did you finish your drink already? Careful. It might break.
Set in the 1990s, a toddler named David is having his second birthday celebration at his home with his mother Zoe. Right off the bat, the game is insanely interactive. You can feel and touch up on everything like a baby would.
I'm just a baby!
Through the tunnel. Choo-choo.
The celebration is interrupted and the atmosphere shifts quickly.
I'll be... right back.
There's a knock at the door. Zoe becomes visibly uncomfortable as she hesitantly walks over to the door. The conversation is muffled, but it is clearly an argument. Who is presumably David's father asks to see his child, but Zoe refuses. Zoe's angry tone scares David, and his fear is shown by his vision getting blurry. This design is crucial. From a child's perspective, conflict between adults is incomprehensible. A blur of sound and body language rather than clear dialogue. The game captures that lack of clarity. You know something is wrong, but you don't understand what or why. The child is caught in the emotional turbulence of adult relationships, powerless to influence them. Zoe returns with a gift.
Look what I found.
But she doesn't say who the gift is from. Instead, she carries David and the gift upstairs to his room. Zoe begins to open the gift, and you catch a glance at a stuffed teddy bear.
Okay, sweetie. Be a dear and play for a bit.
The telephone rings, and Zoe is visibly uncomfortable again. She leaves David in his bedroom to play alone in his playpen. Once we climb out, you can hear giggling coming from a chest. And it is the teddy bear.
Hey, you found me.
A sentient teddy bear. The bear introduces himself as Teddy.
There's so much porn!
They play together for a few minutes with a toy box, a stuffed pink elephant, a storybook, and a toy train. Then they go into the closet.
It has to be darker. Shut the doors completely. Good. This will do nicely.
Which is a large, dark room filled with long, dark colored coats.
You ever feel scared in a dark place like this? You can breathe tight. You might feel a little bit safer. Did you hear that?
Teddy's calm, comforting voice stands out against the tense atmosphere of the house. He guides the child, and when hugged, lights up the darkness. On a deeper level, Teddy represents the child's way of coping with fear. His human-like qualities show how a child imagines sources of safety when the real ones are unreliable.
There you are. What are you doing in the closet?
The small adventure is ended when Zoe finds them.
You've got to stop hiding from Mommy.
She tells David to stop hiding from her and puts him to bed.
Good night, hon. Sweet dreams.
When night falls, the environment turns sinister. Teddy is taken away from David by unseen forces, and his crib gets flipped over. David goes to find Teddy. And he is discovered inside a washing machine. He unplugs it and takes him out. Teddy realizes something is wrong and that they must find Zoe. Walking through the home, it is in disarray, and your mother is still not anywhere to be found. David eventually makes his way into her room. He climbs up onto her bed. After pulling the sheets back, no one is there.
She's not here.
And then he hears commotion outside. The immediate instinct is to hide underneath the bed. David backtracks to the living room, and you see this black ink on the floor. Along the way, they encounter a shadowy figure called Harold. Harold is a tall, looming figure in a long coat holding an umbrella. After walking past it, a door opens and you see a wavy screen, which is tinted on the other side. When you walk past it, you see your mother. This leads to you collecting your first memory, the pendant that the mother wears around her neck. You discover a slide that takes them to a small playhouse. David puts the pendant inside this boiler thing, and it opens the door.
That's it. It seems like the memory you shared with me unlocked the door.
David enters the playground area and picks up a baby owl toy that is blocking a small carousel from moving. You find out you need 6 owl toys to put in the circular spot so David can balance and go up the ledge. David quickly finds another owl in a shed. Once he picks it up, the door shuts. Harold shuts the door. However, the monster does not make an appearance throughout the playground. There are actually no monsters in this chapter. This was intentional from the developers. There is something walking around here, but you never see it. The passive threat keeps you on your toes, and at the same time creates the illusion that you might be safe for the rest of the game. When the door creaks open, it is dark and gloomy. When all 6 owls are collected and the tower is climbed, the player comes across the next memory, the music box that Zoe plays to put David to sleep. You take the slide down and put the memory box in the boiler thing. And now we have 2 more memories to find. David takes the slide and ends up in the forested house. At the beginning of the level, David walks through a hallway overgrown with trees and moss. At the end, a door opens to a large room containing an incomplete jigsaw puzzle covered in a purple cloth. The puzzle rests on a table carved from a tree stump, which connects to the roots, blocking passage to 3 separate directions. In order to remove the roots, the toddler must locate 3 puzzle pieces and finish the puzzle. The first one is found behind a painting in the same room, and it grants access to the left path. On that path, there is a painting. As David gets closer to the painting, it disappears, and there is scenery outside. After walking through the right hallway, which contains another changing painting, the player arrives in a series of forested rooms filled with pieces of old furniture. To navigate between rooms, the player must crawl through the connected vents and use the furniture to reach and open doors. When David reaches the last door, he has to climb a stool encased in stone. When he looks out the window, he sees Haida, a tall, slender woman with branch-like strands sticking out of her head, wearing a white nightgown. The second monster encountered in the game. Once you arrive outside, you pick out the last puzzle piece and a key from the well to unlock the fence. Afterward, Haida stalks David through the forest, making him have to hide under tables, chairs, or inside barrels. There's tons of them throughout the map, making her barely a threat. After getting another key to open another fence, Haida appears behind you once again as David opens the window. Completing the puzzle opens the middle hallway, which has another changing painting that opens up the library filled with trees and bushes. Haida appears again, roaming the shelves and books repeatedly. The child navigates the library while avoiding Haida, hiding under desks, and drawers. Eventually, David finds the next memory, which is his favorite book. He puts it into the boiler, and now he has only 1 more memory to find. David goes down the slide and ends up in a closet. The world consists of halls, giant objects, and flipped rooms. David uses long-ass drawers to cross over places. He eventually meets Heap, the third monster in the game, a giant creature that wears a big coat that covers its head. David reaches a room with a door with 2 inner blue rings and a moon-shaped hole. To open the door, David needs to throw a ball that knocks down the glass that contains the moon key. When the glass breaks, the Heap passes by the broken wall, scaring David. We quickly discover another door with 2 orange inner rings, needing a star-shaped key. After climbing on top of the tables and drawers, David reaches a small room, and he steps on the bottom door. A bunch of toys start to hit the ground. He arrives at the kitchen, and there's a glass bottle that contains the star key. When David throws an orange at the bottle, the heap immediately comes out of the woodwork, making the rest of the oranges fly off the table. After more traveling, David opens a door, and the glass bottle is in front of it, making it tip over and break. This causes the heap to appear. This presents another mechanic of having to avoid knocking glass over to not upset the monster, or hiding when you do. After you get the second door open, David finds another memory. A stuffed elephant, David's favorite toy. As you leave to go down the slide, the lights go out and darkness consumes the room. David runs to the slide. But the floor breaks from under him. And he tries to hold on to Teddy, who is also being held by the heap. This puts too much strain on Teddy's arm, and it breaks off, leaving David to fall into the abyss. David wakes up, and he's in a dark room. The spotlight turns off and turns back on. In a further destination, pointing where to go.
Not now.
You finally see your mom again, and she is constantly dismissing you.
I said, not now.
Zoe is shown drinking and stumbling all over the place, and rambling incoherently. After that, David walks back to the playhouse and puts the last memory in. David is taken back to his closet and sees his house back to normal again. All the objects and toys in the dreamlike world are now in your room again. Walking through the house and downstairs to the kitchen, David sees his mom on the ground with a bottle of wine in one hand and Teddy in another. The beginning objective of the game was to find your mom. We found her, and it is revealed that it was all her. She was the monsters. When the toddler tries to reach for Teddy, he is pushed back by Zoe.
Stay away from me! I'm sorry. I never meant to.
Even trying to console her doesn't work. There's a knock on the door, and presumably it is David's dad, there to save him.
Hi, little one. Come here. Did you like your gift? What happened to his arm? Don't worry. We'll fix him up.
Among the Sleep is the perfect allegory to childhood trauma and how a child deals with it. All the way back to David getting Teddy, the talking teddy bear, Teddy becomes your constant companion and a source of comfort. Hugging Teddy makes the world brighter and calmer, showing how children use trusted figures to soothe themselves when scared. His gentle voice explains dangers and encourages you to keep going, almost like a replacement for a parent. Near the end, the heap rips Teddy away, tearing off his arm. This moment shows how abuse damages a child's sense of safety and breaks their coping mechanism, leading to the collapse of the fantasy and forcing the child to face the painful reality of home. The playground is a small, cozy space the toddler crawls into between chapters. It is filled with toys, drawings, and a warm glow. In stark contrast to the dark and distorted outside world, for David, it is like a hiding spot where they can shut out the world for a moment and feel secure. But that safety never lasts. The door always opens and the child is pushed back into fear. Derealization is a mental health condition that causes people to feel detached from the world around them, or to perceive it as distorted or unreal. David doesn't experience his home in a grounded or consistent way. Instead, ordinary rooms dissolve into vast forests, playgrounds, or endless hallways. This mirrors derealization, where familiar surroundings suddenly feel distorted. In derealization, ordinary objects can take on a detached quality. The toddler's world reflects this. The coats on a rack become looming figures, furnitures become too tall and wacky, and common household noises amplify and become menacing. David often interprets his surroundings through metaphors. Harold represents Zoe when she's ready to go out and purchase a beer, holding an umbrella and wearing thick black boots. When David gets locked inside a shed in chapter 2, it is implied that it's Harold, the mother locking David in so she could go on her drink binges. Haida represents Zoe when she's drinking and full of sorrow. Haida is deeply connected to water, dripping, sloshing, and flooding. In the game's symbolism, water often stands in for alcohol. In the game, bottles are scattered as hazards. She represents how drinking seeps into the home, turning familiar spaces into something threatening. The heap represents Zoe when she becomes angry when David makes a mess. The message being more obvious. The heap appears with rage whenever David makes a mess. The heap's movements are aggressive, echoing the mother's burst temper. Symbolically, it's as though the child has projected their mother's anger into a physical form, made of the very objects she would scold them for scattering. Zoe tries to present herself as a loving and affectionate mother, but when she is drunk, her real personality is exposed. David imagines her as these monsters because Zoe is completely unrecognizable in that state. There are drawings littered all over the games, made by David. On the surface, they look like ordinary child scribbles, but when analyzed in context, they become windows into the toddler's traumatic reality. Children who often experience chaos use drawing as a way to create order. In the playhouse, David's drawings line the walls, almost as if he's surrounding himself with a story that makes sense. Some drawings feature the mother and child together, some of his toys, and then the drawings become more sinister. There are drawings of two large people arguing and a little blue guy in the corner, presumably his parents, and David being in the background, and drawings of the monsters present in the game. The quest for memories and the way spaces rearrange themselves reflect how small children encode trauma as sensory shards rather than coherent narratives. Chapter 5 Prologue, the DLC, was released as a free download, then bundled with the base game to make up the Enhanced Edition, serving as a prequel to the events of the main game. The chapter opens up with David standing in the middle of a snowstorm. There's a light in the distance. Walking closer, you see 5 of David's toys, trapped in an orange bubble. When you get close to the toys, the bubble disappears and a bunch of icicles emerge from the ground. David wakes up in his crib. There's a snow pile in his room. Underneath the desk, there's a toy owl trapped.
Cold. So cold.
When you close the window, the snow melts.
Please. More warmth. More happy.
And when you interact with the music box, the icicles melt. Once you've collected the owl, the world gets brighter. And now you have 4 more toys to retrieve. Falling out of your room, David sees the shadow monster pass by. Arriving in the kitchen, Zoe is slumped over. Then she turns into a white silhouette and disappears. Another toy cries out for help.
Help, please.
David closes both windows and interacts with the radio. Now you have 2 out of 5 toys. The next toy is in the living room. Close the window, then put the VHS tape into the player.
Thank you.
Now you have 3 out of 5 toys. When you collect the toy, David sees the shadow monster once again, standing in the doorway. It doesn't chase or attack you. It's kinda just there. The shadow represents the father and his absence from home, and his anger at his wife and child leaving him. Walking through the house, you see white silhouettes of David's parents, fragments of his memories. Zoe is sitting at a desk, looking depressed. Zoe knocks on the door. When the door is open, you see a man who is presumably David's father sitting at the desk, smoking a cig. David's father walking behind Zoe, slouched over, implying that he tries to help his wife with her alcoholism and protect his son, but she's unwilling to change, resulting in divorce. David makes his way into the basement. In the basement, there's a furnace monster.
Help me.
When the light switches off, the furnace turns on and comes alive, making a roaring sound, scaring David. To make it stop, he has to turn on the lights. The lights turn off after a few seconds, so when this happens, you have to run to turn it back on again. After you get the toy, you can leave the basement. Only one more toy left to go, and it is upstairs. In the attic, the last toy is a rabbit that is sitting on the window. As David goes over, the toy falls out of the window. You crawl out of the vents to get out of the room. David gets flashbacks and sees his dad standing over his mom with his hand raised up, as if he were to strike her. Potentially implying the father is just as abusive and not the savior shown to be. If you notice, the house that takes place in the prologue is different from the house in the main game. Walking through the house, you see objects disappearing and boxes appearing, showing that the family is about to move. You reach the front of the house and go outside, and you hear the toy crying out for help. Right as David is about to pick it up, he is carried by his mom. It's too much. And she glides through the snow. The chapter ends and fades to black. Among the Sleep is not a story about monsters in the dark. It is a story about a child trying to understand a world where the person who was meant to protect him is the same person who makes him afraid. Every chapter externalizes another aspect of abuse, the instability of alcohol, the rage sparked by disorder in the house, neglect, and finally the mother herself. By filtering these truths through the child's imagination, the game's conclusion hammers this subtly home. Mother is a flawed, broken human being whose pain spills over onto her child. Finally, Among the Sleep is a distant exploration of what abuse is like from the perspective of the most vulnerable of them all. A child who was too young to have any concept of what's happening, but old enough to feel the fear.